Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin Galetz. I'm an Industry Education Council Coordinator working with the Regina District Industry Education Council and Sun West School Division. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Bob Bowen, who is an executive producer with Disney Television, lives in Simi Valley, California right now. I'm proud to say that Bob is a graduate of Rosetown Central High School, a former student of mine. And today he'll tell us about his career journey from the prairies of Saskatchewan to winning an Emmy Award just recently. So and just a reminder to all of us before we begin, this session will be recorded and you can rewatch it on the RDIEC YouTube channel for you or others to view in the future. We'd like to request that any students that watch this go to the website at www.rdiec.ca and fill in a student survey that you can find on the webpage. And completion of the survey gets your name in a monthly draw for a $50 gift card. And that's at www.rdiec.ca. So Bob, I'll ask you some questions and feel free to tell us what you can and we'll go from there.
You got it.
First of all, can you kind of elaborate on what your job title is and maybe describe where you work and what the job's about?
Well, presently I work for Disney Television Animation. And present, I am in an executive producer role, which means I'm creating content that of my own, where I oversee from the beginning. I'm creating a show. So it's drawing, it's writing the scripts, it's really from the inception, developing a series. But generally, what my career has been essentially directing an animation. And I'm doing a lot of the same things that I was doing during that time, even with the executive producer role. So directing an animation really is kind of the key of that. And that is taking the written word and the script as it is and putting it to screen so that what we see, the shows that we see, the children's programming we see, the primetime shows we see, is taking that stuff and visually delivering on what's written. So you're in my case, and it's the same in the executive producer role, you're managing a team of artists that are all working towards the same goals. And they all have different, there's the various disciplines within that. There's people that design backgrounds and characters you're seeing on TV. And there's people doing what's called storyboarding, which is drawing out every single scene, every single cut you see on TV. So if we see a show and we see it's a family show and we're starting in the first shot, it's a cut of the family home. Well, that shot of the house had to be designed and someone had to draw that on a storyboard to show us how much of the house are we seeing? Are we far back? Can we see the neighborhood? Are we close to the house? Are we looking in a window? Depending on what the story is. So all that stuff has to happen. And at the same time, then we have people that edit what we draw. We put that to music and audio. And we have to edit that so that we create what we call animatics. Animatic is all those drawings put together to create the show you're seeing in a drawn form. And then at that point, of course, and this is all the fast version, I'll go a little slower, I swear, with this, but then what we're calling is fully animating that. It means that we have put it all to color. We have somebody draw nice, clean lines on everything we've done and put it to color to create the television shows that we're streaming and broadcasting that you see today. That's the fast version of what an executive producer is doing, an animation director is doing.
So just curious, from start to finish, like I know you've worked on some television series shows, like half-hour shows and stuff like that, and then you've done some work on a movie, animated movie. Let's say a half-hour television show, from start to finish, like from the beginning of the process. How long would that take, and how many people may be involved?
Well, surprisingly, it's probably, depending on the show and depending on budgets, it's all about money. TV, costs money to make shows. It can range from anywhere from 50 people to 100 people. But I guess, yeah, so I've got some stuff to show and I'll walk through a little bit of it. So first off, it's television. So first thing that happens is we put together, the producers put together a writing team. So it's a group of people that sit in a room, sit around a coffee table, couches, and they just start pitching ideas. They just start talking about, they say they work for a series that exists. So I'm going to go with, we did the Phineas and Ferb movie for Disney a few years ago. So in that sense, I'll talk about that process. That's on Disney Plus, the Phineas and Ferb movie. So what first thing was a hired group of 5 writers and the creators. So it's 7 people sit in a room and they talk about these characters from the hit show, Phineas and Ferb. What could they be doing? What's a story we want to tell for this movie? It's not the typical format of 11 minutes that the Phineas and Ferb show had been. So now you want to figure out what's a story for the movie. And people can throw out all kinds of ideas. We threw out, I could throw out the stuff I threw out that we didn't go with. We talked about what would be the first day of the show takes place in the summer. What would be the first day of school? What would be an adventure that went around Phineas and Ferb going to their first day of school? We talked about some with time travel. We talked about different concepts. And then we're just throwing it out there and trying to figure out what's a good storyline. What do we want to say? What do we want to, especially in a movie, is a little different than TV, where there's more of a character should learn something sort of major. There should be a big turn. So anyways, that group of writers sits around. We agree on a story, agree on the format. We're working on whiteboards. And computers. People are writing stuff down, but we're using Post-its at times and writing thoughts down and putting it on Post-its. So this story, this idea is coming together. And along the way, as you build what it essentially is, like any story, an exciting incident, something happens, there's rising action, big climax, nice finish, hopefully happy ending, of course, it's a Disney movie. While we've got that simple structure on there, we're now pitching jokes. What would be funny during that? So in the case of the movie, we landed on a space adventure, I'll call it. Like Candace got kidnapped by aliens and she got taken to this planet, meets this person that may or may not be a villain. The brothers go on a quest to try to save her. She's been abducted. And they get there in a rousing adventure and we get to a big finish, comes back to Earth. The villain's going to try to take over Earth and there's a big action finish at the end. That's the initial structure out of the room that gets done. Now we hang some jokes on that. What would be funny along the way in the spaceship? What would be funny about the way the rocket takes off? So you're doing all that. You're working together. You're pitching stuff, trying to make each other laugh. A lot of times that's what it is. That's what the writer's room is about. People getting together, being creative, but bouncing off each other. That means somebody says, oh, I think it'd be funny if the rocket took off from the top of Doofenshmirtz, our main villain of the show, sort of goofy scientist. The rocket's going to take off from the top of his building. I think it'd be funny if the spaceship veered and hit a blimp on the way up, or an advertisement or something, got caught and spun around. Somebody might say, you know what would be funny is if while the rocket's taking off, it just burns his entire building, just destroys it on liftoff. And so inevitably, that's where we landed. Somebody says, hey, here'd be some funny lines to say as he's taking off. What's supposed to be, what is he saying? It's all getting developed. So the script is forming. And finally, we get to a structure of the script. So now in this case, 5 people break off and write a section of the perceived story each, so that it's all happening at once. Sometimes a single writer will go away and write that entire script. But in this case, 5 people went away and wrote agreed sections, 1/5 of the movie, and came back with those. So we slap them back together in a program called Final Draft, which most TV writers work in. It's a structure just to have script formats. So we work in that, and we end up with, inevitably, a script that this will be really boring to share, but I'll show it. Is essentially, we got a finalized script. Fade in, exits, outside exterior space, beauty shot, a large reddish planet fills the top of the frame, Kubrick led music, in cinematic grandeur. It's all, and suddenly there's a low hum, and we pull out and we reveal this red planet in space is the bottom of Candace's reveal as she's screaming mom. Like the show, she's getting the kids in trouble. She's trying to tell them they're in trouble. They're in the backyard, and we reveal that they're being juggled by a giant robot. So this entire script have what's called a first pass. It's lots of pages. I'm just scrolling through here. But that is essentially, that phase is done. So that goes through approvals. There's executives that help to read, give thoughts, give notes. We do more passes. Somebody gets an idea. Hey, we realize maybe we need to start the movie a little bit back to explain the series. So we write a whole section about Candace riding her bike and complaining about what her brothers do to her every day. And this is the day it's not going to bother her, but clearly it does. And then she gets to the house and then she sees the brothers up to no good and she's trying to tell them all. So that finally is approved. At that point, now that script is delivered to someone like myself, the director. So at that point, I've got a team of artists that are working on it, ready to go. I've got designers, which is character and background designers. Now I'm going to jump a little bit because I've got character designs from a different series, but essentially, like anything else, it's just simply someone saying, okay, I've got a description. There's a description of a monkey here. We need in the movie. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know what it is. We would end up with, the artist would deliver me something that looks, this is from Family Guy, but it is what it's called character design. And it's the idea of showing what their first pass was of this. So I get something that looks like this. This is a character design, has the main character, one of the main characters on it. In this case, it's Peter Griffin from Family Guy. And it's got a drawing of a monkey. And the artist has done this. And as a director, I've got this. I sign off on it. I say, hey, it looks great to me. This is it. This is good. We get approved. Or I decide, hey, I want to do something different to that. In this case, this is an example of Peter dressed as a clown. Seeing that, there we go. I was given two choices. I not only agreed to the one on the left, and I made my initials, but I also made some changes. As the director, I'd put some quick notes. Please shrink this and please make this a little bigger. It's a quick red line drawing I do on the file or the artwork, and I send it back to the character designer to work on. So at that same time, we're also conceiving any backgrounds we have, any settings that are new. In the case of Phineas and Ferb, their backyard exists from the series, so we reference that again. We see if there's any places in the shots or stuff we're planning that we've never had drawn before, information that we need. Maybe it's the side of the house or a different part of the fence. We may need new designs for that. And then we also have what's called the prop designer, and that's any objects that are new. In the case of the Phineas and Ferb movie, we open on a giant robot that's juggling the kids in the backyard. The robot's never been seen, so someone's got to design that robot, and we do the same thing. We go back and forth. The prop designer, that's what he does. He sits at his desk and he draws everything from small mundane things to glasses and plates to giant juggling robots. That's their job. And again, as the director, everything's coming through me. I'm signing off on it. There is a boss above me in this case. I should keep mentioning them. The creators of the show get a sign off on this stuff. They put their initials inevitably on. Everything's getting approved. And so now we've created a full design pack that exists of the scenes, the objects, and the people that we need in it that may be new design. So now we go to what's called storyboarding. And now that's where we basically take that script, we read what's in it. The artists, we have a team of, in this case, the movie's a little bigger, but normally for a series, you might have, for a half hour of television, there's about 3 board artists that work with the director, as well as the assistant director, somebody that's boarding and supporting the director the whole time too, someone that he can give tougher scenes to, tougher things to draw. That's where it falls in the AD, so the assistant director. So you've got 3 board artists, the AD, and they all start taking their sections of it. We'll just, even though the movie is longer, we'll say for a half hour, 30 minutes of television, they're taking their thirds, fourths, depending how we break it up, and they're drawing out everything you see on TV in terms of what the characters are doing, how they're standing, what the backgrounds look behind them. You know, if it's a case of the main character by themselves and they're in a kitchen and we need to see a particular cupboard behind them because something's going to pop out of it, then the storyboard artist is drawing the main character and drawing that background so that we can establish what is going on in that scene. And it's a series like a comic book. I'm going to try to quickly pull something I might have, but like a comic book, we can then look at those and know what's going to happen next. So anyways, we storyboard the entire movie in this case. So now there's a whole series of storyboards, drawings that of course don't have for that, but a series of drawings that all exist. The storyboards done their work. We have several production people, by the way, that are always supporting us, always organized. We have a producer that's organizing these people. Generally, he or she, the producer of, say, the movie, is the person that's hired a lot of these artists we've talked about. So we have coordinators that handle files. I should mention everything we do, even though we hand draw everything still in animation, in 2D animation, not 3D, everything's drawn still, but it's all digital. We draw on a tablet work surface called a Cintiq. Everything's digital. We work, the storyboard artists work in a program called Storyboard Pro. That is a structure so that we can see, it sets it up in a manner so that the frame, the size of the image matches what we're going to project on TV, which in this case, we all have flat sort of TVs these days, and widescreen television is the norm now. So our frames in Storyboard Pro are that size. Quickly see if I can just pull up here a file real fast. So we've storyboarded the stuff out. I'm going to give a quick look at what our program looks like and what's some is a very short storyboarded scene, because it's an example of another aspect of animation, and that is animating. So, and Kevin, please bear with me and tell me if this is all clear. When I see this, I'm just going to pull this up real fast. This is towards the end of the movie. Aliens have invaded Earth. They're at a ball diamond, and they have taken over. And we've established that these aliens can blow up from the waist up. They can explode from the waist up without dying. Okay, then their legs walk around, they're alive, and they grow back later. So this is what's called, this entire work area, this program, this is Toon Boom Storyboard Pro. So what you're seeing here is a drawing in black and white that has, in this case, is it all clear? Is it coming through?
Yep, yeah, it's real clear.
Great.
Yeah,
great. So we've got I've got several layers that I draw on, that I drop artwork in that I need. So in this case, I drew out this alien because I wanted to give an example of what it looked like for him to blow up. He has just caught a free t-shirt. When they get very excited, they blow up. So this is a good example of a BG, by the way, artist that I should have had this open sooner. I'm just going to turn off a layer or two here quickly. Find that last one. No, I gotta check this. Well, what you're seeing here is a very, very loose, very vague version of a BG, which was this angle of the ball diamond. So there's nobody in the bleachers right now. I've cut an area because I didn't want it to distract. But essentially, another artist drew out this angle to get approval on the look of the ball diamond at the major league game. So that would be something that I would have signed off on, and then we plug it into use for this angle of the movie. In this case, you're seeing the surface. You're seeing a little more than what's on screen. So right now, this shape that's up in the corner was the alien mothership that landed at the edge of the ball diamond. But really what we are framing, what we see on screen is this. So I flip that on so that I can see, this is what I want the viewer, what the artist, what the storyboard artists are doing. This is what I want them to see on screen, okay? At the bottom, we have our timeline. So animation has always been about editing and flipping pages back in the day. I sort of do something similar. When I say flipping pages, means doing all those little drawings on separate pages that can make something animate, a ball bouncing, whatever. In this case, I have several pages or images that are in the timeline to just make this drawing you see here. And I'm going to drag it through so that this he slowly gets bigger and eventually blows up, splat. And that's it. So I did this so that we could see what it looked like. It's also so that it's ready for when it gets cleaned up. When I say cleaned up, I mean it gets drawn nicely, it gets colored and put to, everything gets, background gets drawn in fully. You'll see all those details in the ball diamond. All the little textures and colors will be in there later. But I did this so that we have an example. This is what I, as a director, want them to see, or want everyone to do, so what the viewer will see. Now, what we normally would see is what we call thumbnails, or a thumbnail view, but this is the storyboard as we see them now. So I've drawn on here this storyboard, but down here is the example when I say about what looks like a comic book. Is pages, I keep saying pages, it's digital, but it's old habits. I started before when we were all drawing on paper, but it is images and images. It is in this case the same one, but this in normally in a different file for the movie, you'd go to the next scene and the next scene and the next scene, so that we can see the same thing. I'm dragging along the bottom. And like I said, we draw, though we don't draw on paper anymore, we still, what we do is we still hand draw. I still draw, do something very fast or quick. I'll draw a rough. This is what every storyboard artist works, what every prop designer, background designer, we all start the same thing. We draw it a rough. Hey, I want said alien, I haven't drawn these guys in a few years, but I'll do the best I can. I want said alien to be strutting along, and I want him to be waving and smiling for no good reason that I can think of. He's just, that's what he's up to. He's, I don't know why he's giving thumbs up. It's very messy. I'm doing my rough. Get this done. I'm throwing another layer on this thing, and then I'm just changing my mind. This is the great age of redo or undo. This is still a rough line, and the storyboard artist, what we call a rough line, we can make it prettier or not. I'm going to rush a little bit, but our point is, this is enough to show what in a storyboard is important, and that is what's happening, what expression does said alien in this case have, which way is he looking, any emotion we need to put on him, any important details, his size. Little details that I may or may not want to put on right now, because eventually this will be all redrawn by artists again to animate and put all little drawings between to have this move. I'm just giving them the guide as to what I want. So in this very messy little alien I've drawn quickly would be essentially, and then I've already decided, oh, this is the background. I don't know, there's some sort of cityscape I'm deciding to put in here for no good reason. Enough detail, enough to show this is where I want the background to sit within the picture, and so on and so forth. And it's a slightly cloudy day for no good reason. And there's grass here, I don't know. There we go. Very fast version of what the storyboard's like and what Storyboard Pro is like, and what all the artists that I'm talking about, storyboard artists, the directors, what we're all working within. And these files are being shared. So an artist works in this for a number of weeks drawing the storyboard. It's given to me for approval. I can go through it. And the great part about the now compared to when I was working in paper is we have so much more control than we ever used to. And a good example of this is, in this case, I can now, for the first time, and it's been a few years now, I can not only draw this out to see how this alien blew up, but I can set the time of it, the timing of it, so that I can play it and see what it looked like. That come across, Kevin? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
That's the idea. I can test to see how fast I want that stuff to go. That is another aspect I'll quickly talk about. So I'll get too hung up on this, but this generally is a very key part of making any television show. Besides the script, obviously that's this beginning, but it's a very key part of making a show is the storyboarding, because that's now where we laid down the images. Now it's a matter of we get all these images, we go to an editor, that's someone sitting at a workstation with all this artwork together, and we're sitting with the director, the creators, executive producers, and we're now deciding on how fast and how slow everything you see moves. We're putting in the actor's audio, which means all the recorded, that's happened somewhere else, more people recording actors, recorded the script, all that audio is done before we start drawing. The first pass is. So we've recorded all these actors, we give that audio, hopefully to the storyboard artist right about the time they're breaking it down to help guide how they may draw an actor. If an actor read the alien screaming really happily, really big smile, well, we want to reflect that. If it was very neutral, somehow he's just like, yay, we want to reflect that in the drawings too. So we've got that happening as well. So while we're in editing, we've got all this artwork, we're sitting there, we're deciding on the speed, we're getting it to what it starts to feel very much like what you see on TV as an animatic. Now, an animatic is just that artwork put together to sound and music, and it'll feel very much, other than it doesn't have all the smooth animating and it's not in color. It will have all the elements that'll feel like the show. So let's see if I can pull a little fast. So we've got the editor in place. At that point, we create an animatic that we can show to executives and the art team and everybody involved. We all watch it, and we look for what we could change. The executive producer will say, hey, I always thought this should happen a little faster. I always thought maybe we could bridge that. Maybe we don't need that whole scene. There's a whole scene we drew, and it doesn't really help us story-wise. And if we cut out that and we go from this moment over that moment to the next, no one's going to know. This is a better way to go. In the case of the movie, we are always pitching jokes. So as a director and one of the writers of the movie, I would go home and have an idea for a scene. I have a thought like, hey, this would be funny if this happens in this moment. And I'll go ahead and I'll draw, much like the exploding alien, I'll draw that at home. And then on Monday, I'll come back with the file and give it to the editor and say, put it into what we have now is the cut of the movie, all that stuff put together. And we'll put that in, see how that plays, and keep doing that, keep changing. And during rounds of notes and showing it to people, we're refining the movie to where the artwork is all, the stories are being refined, and it's all coming together. It's all this, not necessarily designer people at this point, but we're still employing storyboards, we're still using the editor, we're going back and forth until we finally get to a locked copy of the movie. And I say locked means it's been edited and it's the length that we intend it being for broadcast or streaming in that case. So that means that there's not going to be anything added after that. Hopefully things can't happen later if we're in a pinch. But the point is what we see on screen in that animatic, and you saw the alien exploding. I'll give you an example of a quick animatic of a scene. In the movie, one of the characters keeps referencing a space show that he loved, a canceled space show, very much like Star Trek. In the script, it just said he mentioned it and he was trying to find solutions to their problems in space by using what he learned from the show, misguided learning from the show. So I thought as the director and one of the writers thought, hey, it'd be funny if every time he mentioned the show, or at least especially the first time, we saw the fake opening credits of it. So in this case, this is an animatic. I'm going to share the sound for this. This is an animatic of Baljit has just said, he's just said the name of the show, and we cut to, in this black and white sense, what he was talking about. Here we go.
Just like the crew of the USS Minotaur from Space Adventure.
Space Adventure is calling you. So put on your space face and make your way to the stars and beyond the blue quasars and nebulas to on
TikTok, people. We have a sister and a daughter.
So as you saw here, and this is a good example of the movie changing, that's an animatic. That is to music, timed out, all that artwork that I talked about, put to music, put to time so that it plays as we want it to see for our build of the movie. In the movie, initially, this character, Balaji, talked about it at a location that was Doofenshmirtz's, the villains, sort of not villains, tower. And this is where he first brought it up. But by the time we actually did the movie and agreed on the final thing, we had him at the front door of his house with a box set of the movie, and Phineas and Ferb would come over to ask for his help, and he wanted to watch the show there. That's how much things had changed. The credits were still in this movie, but where we did that cut in was very different in the final thing. More storyboarding and such. So that's a good example of that kind of thing. But as you can see from this, and I'm just going to stop you places, it's the same thing. So this is a good example of, these are the main characters from this series, this fake series. And so it was design, in this case, because this was new, again, we employed character designers to draw the people. I created a background in the storyboards that then the background designers had to match. And then these ray guns and this fire axe and laser axe had to be drawn up by prop designers. So once that's agreed to, we take, by the way, all those prop designs, all those background designs now, and we get them into what's called the color department. We have a whole team of artists working in Photoshop, putting color into the backgrounds and stuff. And we, as an executive producers, directors, we sit and we approve that too. So now we've bundled up all this material, the storyboards, the artwork, and now we're going to send it. In our case, a lot of animation in North America is done this way. We usually send it somewhere else, far away, usually overseas, to be fully animated. And that means, what it is what it sounds like. You saw those drawings, they sort of flip to poses and nothing's that smooth. Now it's somebody figuring out, or not figuring out, drawing out all those in-betweens, drawing all that artwork to animate, like a flip book I'm sure everyone's seen in their lifetimes, so that it's done to the color we've approved and to the timing. And I should mention there's another group of people after, right before we ship it, called timers. And they write down, almost like accountants, how fast we want every bit of movement to happen. It's a whole sheet, an X sheet they're called, and they quickly write out how long it takes every step, how many drawings it takes to make a character simply move one leg to the other. In this case, it might be 4 drawings are needed for you, for the eye to animate to see that happen. So there is a whole team of that doing. Usually in a half-hour show, it's 3 timers plus a supervisor. And again, all comes back to the director to approve. Yes, that looks good. The timing seems great. Good, go. So overseas then draws it all up. Everything comes back while overseas is working real fast. I just only got one more here somewhere. Of course, I lost that. Let's see. Anyways, we approve what's happening overseas. I call it overseas because we send stuff to Korea a lot. A lot of Korean animation studios do a lot of the in-between for television shows you see. They send back what's called line tests. That means it's now drawn nicely in black and white with all the drawings. And as a director, I can say, hey, this doesn't seem fast enough, or hey, the character seems out of position. Can you please move them up here? That all comes back. It's reassembled again by the editor. Now we've got more people coming in, and I'm sure I'm leaving people out. We've got people coming in doing sound effects. We got a sound effects pass for the whole thing. As a director, executive producer, we approve that. We sit in sessions with headphones on. In this case, we're not always, sometimes we're in large rooms where they're playing it back for us and we're saying thumbs up or thumbs down to a sound effect we're hearing. In the movie, there's a character that was running off screen, escaping, and it was all an off-screen joke where an alien was escaping, a captive alien, and he was stealing hovercrafts and stealing different stuff, kept crashing, and it's all his footsteps while we stared at our main characters. In that case, it was approving, did the sound effects sound loud enough? Did the spaceship sound right? When it crashes, is it loud enough? Is it getting far away? It's all at approvals. And we do what's called a mix. We mix all that sound so you hear it hopefully the best way we can. The music, nothing overpowers the dialogue, the people talking, so that's all put together. Finally, at the end of all this, we've got the full-length movie in color to proper sound for delivery. And there's more people as coordinators that make sure that it has the right technical specs to be on streaming, to make sure that it is the right size digitally so that when it projects on your TV at home, it doesn't look funny or isn't pixelated, or it's several other people that go. There's lawyers that watch stuff, lawyers that go, hey, we don't feel you can, hopefully earlier than this, but go, this might be a problem. We legally borrowed something, and making examples, but we show product on screen that we don't have approval for. That we didn't do that, but I'm saying that'd be an example where people reviewing it are saying, hey, this needs to be altered. Or a good example is whenever we have kids riding bikes in television shows, we draw helmets on them. That's a safety standards and practices rule. So there's a person somewhere in the office that just looks at our thing and says, yep, oh, wait a minute, there's no bike helmet on this kid riding. So we need to draw it on there and make sure it's included in the final product you see. So finally, go over the movie. That would be, and the movie really is a longer version. I've bounced back and forth between TV, half-hour television, and the movie. But really, and in time, and here's where you started with Kevin asking, is television show is about a year, about from the time we decided to make an episode and start writing to the time that it lands on television. Everything I've described took place over almost a year's time.
Right.
The movie was longer. The movie was more like 2 to 2.5 years. But a television show you see on TV, The Simpsons, I should have stuck with that. I didn't work on The Simpsons, but it's the same thing. I worked on Futurama back in the day, but same type of thing. As Family Guy, American Dad Plays the Day, it's half hour. You're really looking at a year. Shows can be cranked out at the smallest I've ever heard of, and this hurts, is 9 months. But it's a year's time. So that's the rambling, super fast version of what a director does, what an executive producer does, and what these people are all working together, collaborating to make television and animated movies.
You've said a couple things there, Bob. There's a lot of collaboration. Obviously, you're working with a team, so teamwork skills would have to be pretty high. In that, you don't work.
Yes, and that's a great point, and that's the key about being a director. Being an executive producer means you have theoretically a pretty strong opinion. You have a vision for what you want to do. You know in your head how you want stuff to play out, a joke, a moment, an entire story. And the thing about being in these roles, because it's a whole team of artists, but artists like anybody else, there's various personalities at play. Some people are a little more introverted, they're quiet, and they want to just work on their stuff, and they're super talented. It takes away none of their talent. But there's people that I would say more like a group of us like myself that are opinionated. I keep using that because that's what this is. I have a strong opinion, I see how it is. And the reality is I have to be able to then communicate to a team of people what I'm trying to achieve so that we can all get there together with the same goals. We all read it and we get it. But we as a director, I go, yeah, this is how this moment's going to play. And this is what I need from you, say the prop designer. I need more detail that I'm seeing here. I need the scale of something to seem bigger. So I want you to put more detail than necessary so that something seems very large, like a giant spaceship. I want to see a lot of panels so that people don't feel like it's a small spaceship. But it's in the director sense and an executive producer sense, yes, it's communicating, being able to talk to people and say, this is what we're doing. And also to say, I really love what you did, but it's not quite what I'm picturing. I need you to adjust the following. So there is that because it is the idea that you have to have that vision in your job to do this directing, and it is collaborating, getting along, but definitely in this aspect of what we're doing, you're leading a team, so you got to be able to get them. We're all on we have the same goals, but to take their talents to make this final thing work in a way that you believe the audience will respond to. And it's subjective. That's the thing that gets funny, is everything's subjective. What I think is the way to go with the joke. There could be 1,000 other versions of it, but it's the reality is you're in this role, that's your job, and you push forward with the way you think it should be. So it is, I say the word opinionated, and that really truly is a big part of it.
Maybe to summarize what I take from some of the things you've said are like collaborative, like I said, good communication, good leadership skills, cooperative, all that stuff. And, I think with that, you have to have some confidence too. I mean, especially in your role.
Yeah. You do. And I skirt the line because I'm also an artist, so I'm incredibly insecure. It's terrible. And you never quite believe in anything you're drawing until somebody sees it. But It is knowing you have confidence in your abilities, and that grows over time. And that's a big part of being an artist, is you had to spend lots of years drawing really bad drawings to get, like anything else, you got to practice to get good at it. And you build confidence in what you do by practicing it. And with any career, it's the same. I'm sure it's an idea that you have enough experience that you start to see what works, what's better. Even in the small things, that program I showed you, you start to realize, what can I utilize this program to make my life easier, to get things done quicker, to show things clearer, all the things that you build the confidence to do this job. Certainly there's that aspect that grows, but yes, creatively, it could be a mess.
I think too, I take from what you said too, some flexibility part of it, because it's ever changing. Like the whole field is changing.
Yes, and I think, when you say flexibility, it's a good part about being an artist that's important too, and that is being open to criticism. You're always learning. I'm always learning things. You're always picking up stuff. That's the way it is. But in this business especially, and I think it's probably in most things, but in this business, if you're not open to criticism, and I say that because I have to give critiques on everything I'm really seeing. I'm saying, this worked, this didn't. You have to be willing to change. And sometimes it is the idea like, hey, the joke just didn't land. We did I'm thinking more Family Guy and American Dad, where we do smaller sequences that are, say, like the cutaways, they call them Family Guy, where it's just a cutaway joke that can be lifted out or dropped into episodes. Sometimes they don't work. So you're just drawn for 2 weeks, and then suddenly someone says, that ending doesn't work. I need you to redraw it. Or the thing that you drew in it isn't coming across fearsome enough. A dragon, something, creature. And you have to be, as an artist, be able to go, yeah, I'm going to replace that. I'm going to redraw it and learn and grow. So I'd say in general, being an artist is you have to be able to deal with that and adapt. I don't know that anybody 100% ever does, even as a director. If I got notes on shows, it's always tough to get the notes. It always stings a little. You just put your best foot forward and you get it all together, and then somebody, supervising director or executive producer, comes and says, I always felt like we should see the stage. There's a character on a stage. We should see it not from this way, but from this way. And you're like, I'm going to throw all that stuff out to do this. And it always stings a little. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, you have to be like that. Or it's like, yeah, I'm good. Because part of this job, and especially in the directing thing, is you have an attachment to stuff. The reason you want to push to these visions, it is personal to you. You're connected to it. So, but you've got to be open to criticism. Sorry.
Yeah, and patience too, probably, by the sounds of it.
Patience for sure, and it sadly grows less and less every year as I get older. But
you've touched on some of the equipment you use and some of that program, which I thought there was a really good illustration when you pull that screen up with the storyboard and how that works. I think students like to see that. You talked to me before we went on recording about where you're working now, like what you're setting. You're working at home, is that correct?
Yes. So real briefly, a lot of people are lucky enough in this business to have a similar setup to what we have at work, which is really just for many artists, they're in cubicles at Disney and other studios, their own cubicles, sometimes their own offices together, and they have what's the Cintiq tablet, and they've got a computer. And they really don't need much more than that these days. Everything digital, every reference you need is there. So a lot of times it's a 2-screen setup where we have a screen just to throw artwork we need to look at while we're drawing, and we're drawing on that surface, and that's that area. That program you saw would be filling pretty much the full area of what is the Cintiq tablet. So when the pandemic hit and everyone was running for the doors, people like myself, I had the exact same setup at home. I just came, and the next day I was at my desk here instead of at the office. So we just kept going. And for anyone that didn't, younger artists coming in, the stuff's not free. It's, computers are expensive. Cintiqs are not inexpensive. They're not crushing, but they cost money. Not everyone has that. Disney and other studios are put to provide to get equipment home to them as fast as they could. And in some cases at some studios, it was simple, like, we're not coming in Monday, grab what you can carry to your house and sign here, and out they went. And we adapted. So for the last year and a half or more, almost now, we've all been working at home. So I work out of my studio here at home and have the same setup and do the same things. And simply, I have, like this meeting is being recorded, that's the way I talk to anybody at the studio I need to deal with. You know, during that time, I was supervising directing on a new Disney show to get it started and to set up their production. So I met with the two directors in the show and just talked about what I felt was best for them to get the job done in terms of their time, how to utilize their people the best, give advice that way, checked, watched their animatics, made notes. So I was doing all these discussions and talking like this from home. So that's the way, and it'll continue this way, obviously. But the reality is, this work could stay this way and always kind of could be this way. And before I was doing that, when I was simply directing, I was still working on my own ideas out of my studio right here at home. So it may be nights and weekends that I was coming home and working on animatics of stuff that I was pitching, developing, where I was doing it anyways at home. So it really wasn't that big a leap. And truly, it is a social element in animation, but it really isn't too, because a lot of times it is, we're a base of this, I should say, is we're a deadline-driven business. We're not punching a clock in the sense that we have to be at the office at 9 sharp and we walk out at 5 sharp. Our business is about what can you deliver on time. So what we have an animation union here that covers the main studios in town. And our contract with the studios simply says, you're not required to be at your desk any day, any hours you need to be, as long as you're delivering the stuff on time at a quality expected. Because we have highs and lows in this business where during storyboards, we're working like crazy. But now we get to the place where as a director, I'm waiting for an editor to do their job. There's really not much I can do. I can check on other stuff going on. I can make quick notes, but I'm waiting. So it's I don't want to say feast or famine. That's not exactly what it is, but it's the idea of busy and slow. We don't have a set amount of time. It's just a matter of, can you deliver the designs, the storyboards, everything at a certain time in a certain quality? You can't, it's expected. These are, it's expected to be at this level that you're delivering quality. But yeah, we don't have a 9 to 5. I tend to be a little more regimented as a director, and it's easier for me to manage that deadline. What I mean to say is, I used to, as a storyboard artist, realized if I could get to a certain point, I knew what my month and a half was, so 6 weeks to get my episode of, say, Family Guy done. I knew how much I had to draw during that time because I had, and I skipped this step, I had thumbnailed, I'd drawn very quick versions of the entire shots I was going to draw on storyboards, really quick sketchy ones. I knew how much I had to draw. So I knew that every day, if I get to a certain point, I'd mark them on the drawings. If I get to those every day, I was done. So a lot of times I could work what I consider a standard day, get started at 9, and by, in that case, 7, I was at a studio, be done for the day. But sometimes I've had to work, and it just varies, where in order for me to get done what I'm looking to get done, this isn't required, it's just circumstance. I'm starting at 8 in the morning and I'm working till 10 at night. But then that's, say, 5 weeks of pain, and suddenly I have 4 weeks where I'm at my desks, scrolling through the internet and waiting for editors to get done and tell me that they've completed cuts so I can go watch. So it's that kind of lifestyle, whether we're at home, it gets less and less of the fun I'm talking about. As a director, when I didn't care, it was executive producer ruins everything, because now I got no fun. Now you're just here all the time. But the point is, as a storyboard artist, as all this stuff I was talking about, it's very flexible as long as you can deliver on time. Deadline driven is the whole basis. I mean to stray into all that.
Well, I think you've described kind of in both roles, storyboard artist or in the director or producer roles, there's not a standard day. It's not like a 9 to 5, like you said. And I guess, is that do you find, like, my next topic I was going to ask what was challenges? Is that one of the challenges, is getting used to that, or was there other?
No, it's not really a challenge. At first, a lot of people come in and do that. We're all young once. And in those times, a big part of this is, I'm lucky enough, no matter what I've described in terms of stresses and trying to get stuff through work-wise and on time, I'm lucky enough to do something that I would have as a hobby done for free. I like drawing as a kid, and I realized I wanted to get that as a career. And by the time I did finally go to art school and was getting paid, those first jobs, it doesn't mean that they're giving you no money. We're getting paid and we all get treated very well, but you're just happy to be there. Some of these people, someone's paying you to draw. So I don't even think of the early days. I was at Futurama, my first animation job, and I was younger, definitely young in general. And you're just so excited to you're here all day drawing nonsense, and I got a Bender statue from back in those days, drawing this nonsense, and someone paying you, and it doesn't feel the same way. But like anything, things become a job, and you grow older, and it changes, and priorities can change, and family and balance. And yeah, you go to where, hey, it's important that I spend time with my family. I cannot be here all the time. Yeah. So you start to pick and choose, and things can get frustrating when we suddenly have to put in long hours. And I really wasn't prepared for it, say, because something went wrong and somebody had a request, and it can be frustrating. But at the base of it all still is that idea that I love the basis of what I do, and I'm lucky in that sense. And that's really, a part of this for all the artists. It's certainly, it's a dangerous position, because if you don't think of it as work, sometimes it can be, I don't mean to say taken advantage of, but people can spend too much time where you want to go like grab an artist and go, you need to go home.
Yeah.
You can't be here all the time.
Well, and I think that just leads into what I was thinking about. The next thing I was going to ask about rewards. You obviously said one of them, you get to do what you love doing. What are some other rewards?
I think love what you love doing. In my case, another reward was, and it didn't necessarily work. I didn't think of it this way at first when I came to town, to Los Angeles, is working on shows that I'd watch anyways. So I grew up on The Simpsons. I was, coming out of high school when it first premiered on TV. It was the greatest show in the world to me then. And to have a job where you're working on Futurama and working on comedy that you would watch anyways was very rewarding, and you're now shaping the moments that you would have hopefully, been laughing hard at. And that was very rewarding. It is. And it can, during the movie was the longest thing that I'd ever worked on in terms of like when we started to when we delivered it. TV is very immediate, even though I said the year, the initial directing phase, there's only so much time on a schedule. We're doing 22 episodes a year, a lot of times in prime time. So you just episodes have to keep being delivered so that they can be on TV every single week a year from now. So you kind of get through the TV episode, and then it's done and it's out of here because you got to go on to the next one. With the movie, it's longer. And during some of that long time, it can feel like repetitive and like work. We're watching the movie for the 18th time, and you're like, holy man, like I can't even stare at this anymore. I'm too close to it. I can't even be objective. Is it funny anymore? But rewarding when we get it done, and we've got all the credits in there, and we're watching the final pass, and it goes on and hopefully is received well. That's rewarding. It's like anything. Any artist is creating artwork. Not everybody, but I would say generally they're creating. They want to show someone to get a response. Hopefully they like what they're seeing. And it's the idea that it is rewarding when you put something together. You put a lot of time into it, a lot of effort and sweat and all that nonsense, and it's received well. So that is rewarding as well. Being paid to draw, very rewarding. Being paid to do something you like, very rewarding.
I know you're probably not going to mention it, so I'm going to mention it for you. I would imagine it's a little rewarding winning an Emmy award for your work. How does that feel, or how did that feel? It's not something it's shocking to me. Actually, it was not something I had any designs on or thought about at all. In fact, even when we got nominated, somebody sent one of the crew, the other writers, sent out to us all that we got nominated. And we're all at home in a bit of this bubble that we've all been in. So every day, and in California, by the way, kid from Saskatchewan, California is the worst because the seasons almost don't change. So you can't tell when you are. It's just a mess. Like you can't look outside and say, oh yeah, it was snowing at that time. Every day is like, I see that green tree today. There it is. That being said, suddenly that came through. I didn't even know. I didn't feel like, what time of year is this? We got nominated. How do we get nominated? And then it was, well, the awards are Saturday, and it's like, I saw the list. We're not winning. So it's like, it didn't become a thing for me. And then suddenly we won, and I'm like, how did this happen? So I don't know. It's surreal. I think I spent a week sort of shaking my head like that worked out. It's not, again, it was not something I planned. No. I'm lucky enough, by the way, to work with a lot of talented people. I know people that have won awards over the years. We did win one on Futurama. I was a storyboard artist on the episode that won that year, but that's for like the high levels that get an award. We got certificates from the Emmys that year, but it is, I'm lucky enough to work and
have met a lot of very talented people, work with and met them. And so it doesn't feel, I don't mean to dismiss it. It's just that it sort of is part of the town. I thought so. And then you went and you're like, holy hell. Like, I don't know, sorry, that's kidding. But the point is that, yeah, it's shocking. And I don't know,
Yeah.
surreal. Like, it's not, I said this before. I think it's a thing where if I were, it's 1988, I'm 18, I'm going to graduate from high school. A portal opens up and me from now, future me, steps out and says, I'm going to tell you what you do now and where you live. There's not a way I'd understand how did I get from right here to there? What the, I wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I know it's not that I did anything magical. It's just that it's not expected. It doesn't, it's hard to compute a little bit. And I'd say the Emmy thing was like that a little bit too on top of it. You're just like, this is not how I saw this all playing out.
Well, that kind of leads, like, you just kind of led me right into that. It's like, how was the journey? How, like, describe it, like, because we got some students here watching that are,
Yeah,
they're
well,
sitting there. I know a couple of them are from Rosetown,
sure.
where you came from, and
I'm the kid. So yeah, no, that's good. It's the 80s. I'm the kid in school, small school, Milden. Mr. Glutz taught me there. I'm the kid that can doodle. I'm not particularly good at it, but I certainly could see that I could, and that's it. So I'm drawing my borders and I'm drawing jokes about friends and nonsense, you know, my sister drawing pictures of her getting stepped on by cows and jokes, all dumb jokes. And I decide, well, you know, maybe I should be doing this. And what do I do? And so we did not have the internet. It's not like I could really look around. I knew nothing of storyboarding or directing animation. I understood Disney was around, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like I could go like tap somebody and ask about that job. And I was doing cartoons, comic strip style cartoons. And I thought, well, I wanted to do that. And so when I graduated in Rosetown, I had the intent of being some sort of artist like that. But I went during graduation year, I went to the College of Art in Calgary to have a look. My mom took me out for a tour. That's a good school. It's a fine arts school, or at least it was then. It's a long time ago, things changed. But the point is painting and sculpting and everything. And I looked around at that and I just did not see what I wanted to do. It did not seem like me. I just thought, well, this isn't really, you know, it wasn't an animation school. It wasn't people drawing cartoons, comic books. I just saw art, and nothing wrong with that. It's funny how you grow and you want to appreciate that. The point is, I didn't know what to do then. So now I'm 18, and I'd say at the graduation, well, I'm going to be an artist, but then I'm taking a year off, and then I'm going to be an artist. Is the idea. I think I still said I was going to go to the College of Art, but I didn't know what else to really say. And so during that year, I realized this isn't going to work for me. I don't know what to do with myself that way. You know, I drew some comic strips and tried to apply to newspapers. But the point is, I didn't know a big thing that was very important at the time. And I was telling people, you know, that I was going to be an artist and all stuff. But the point is, I didn't really understand a very important concept, and that is drawings, like everything else, you have to practice to get better. I really thought in those days, you either drew or you couldn't. You could sing or you couldn't. I didn't understand that art was something you had to do. You start off sketching and you understand you've got that something in the, you know, genetics, you're visualizing a certain way, but it's practicing, it's drawing and drawing and drawing, even when you don't want to draw it. You can't just be for fun, you got to practice. And I wasn't thinking like that. So for me, it was just like, well, I don't know where to go, what to do. And I started going more traditional path, which was at first I went to, Kevin, you'd had done the career thing back then. It was pointing at teacher. And I thought that was good. I thought the idea was I would be an elementary school teacher that could draw a little bit, and the art and that kind of teaching would be good. I liked working with kids. It seemed like a good idea. So, but at the same time, I still went to looking at what my dad did, my grandpa did. I went to tech. I was going to work for the power company. I did take a year and a half of education at U of S, but at the same time, I was working summers for the power company, and they offered me a job. So at that point, I was like, well, this is what I'm doing. I had goals to be a lineman, and I went to Estevan, and that's what I was going to do. I was going to be like dad and grandpa, and that's it. And I, you know, I don't want to make that sound like that's bad. I had a great time. Went down to Estevan, worked with a great group of people, and that could have worked out that way. There's nothing wrong with that. It was good. But a few things were happening. I was still drawing at lunches on napkins, usually jokes on piece of paper about the crew and stuff going on. And for the first time at around 22, I realized I was getting better. The drawings were improving. I drew a picture of a guy on my crew getting struck with a puck in the head, and from a game the other night, and it's a big joke, dumb thing. And I realized, God, the drawing's getting better. And I thought, you know what, I gotta revisit this. So for 3 years at SAS Power, I started just really pushing and telling everyone I could, I want to draw. And someone would say, I knew this guy. There's an artist in Saskatoon that's drawing Superman. And so I looked him up in the phone book and literally just cold called him. Hello, I don't sort of bother you. I only want to think about being an artist. You tell me what it is you do. And in a sense of what's happening right now, this guy's named Tom Gromit is his name. He was good enough to just spend a bit of time chatting me on the phone about the basics of his career. And I was asking very basic questions such as, what kind of pencil do you use? It said he's a penciler, and the comic book said he was a penciler. What does a penciler do? I didn't have a clue. It was inkers and pencils and comics. So I was starting to focus into comic books then. I decided, okay, it's not comic strips. I'm doing comics. I'm drawing superheroes. And I'm doing it in my spare time more and more. Now I'm really trying, what is a comic book page going to look like? And I'm practicing, and I'm redrawing the same ones again and again. I'm making up stuff, but I'm redrawing them over and over, and I'm seeing improvement. And I got some feedback about, hey, you got to learn anatomy, you got to learn this stuff. And I'm getting better and better at it. And perspective, drawing backgrounds so I look right. And at that point, I'm 25, and I know that the only way I'm going to really progress is if I do something drastic, and that's go to school and really dive all the way in. I need more feedback than I'm getting. It can't just be applying to jobs and being told, work on this, work on that. And so at 25, I went to New Jersey to an art school for comic books, Joe Kubert School of Cartooning, comic books and cartooning, in Dover, New Jersey. Sold their home, drove down in the U-Haul with everything, and lived there, and went to art school. And art school did what hopefully something like this will do for anyone it gave me a wider view of what was out there. As we did, I did a 3-year course, and I was still focused on comic books at the time, but during, especially my second year, we did an assignment in narrative art. So we're still drawing comic book pages all day and learning all the basics of drawing and drawing all the time. And the creator of the school, Joe Kubert, believed, you got to learn, this is a deadline-driven business. I'm going to give you assignments, so you're drawing all day to make you realize this is the job part of it. Now, this is the hard part, the challenge. Is that drawing isn't for fun anymore. Drawing is, you got to deliver so much every day. And that's how school was. And I still loved it. I thought it was great, and it was learning. In second year, we had an assignment the teacher did for storyboarding. And at that point, when we had 30 of us in the class, and we all did the same scene from a TV show called Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, I could see that what I was doing was more that than anything else that comic book wise, that the cuts, the way TV edits, that was for me. And I started focusing at that point. I started asking questions like, do you know someone doing this? Yeah, a buddy of mine that graduated. Art school is also the great network. You meet people like-minded. Teachers can point to people that may have succeeded in certain industries, and you can ask questions. And so I started connecting my end of my second year and my final year with a working storyboard artist who was working in film in Los Angeles. Started connecting with him, getting feedback, getting criticism, sending him through fax machine, sending him artwork, and getting it, improving and working and focusing on that. So by the time I graduated, I no longer was going to work in comics. I was doing storyboards. I was in Los Angeles the next month, and that was my goal, was to work storyboarding. And in fact, when I got here, I was working in commercials, television commercials, everything visually, live actions, also storyboarded for pre-planning. So before they shoot and set up cameras, they got to draw out every scene, even though it's not as intensive as what the animation is. It's still saying there's an actor here and there's an actor there, and we need them this close or whatever. So we do those storyboards. So that was really it. And it was only during there was an actor's strike in the very second year of my career where I wasn't working. All of a sudden, they weren't shooting any commercials in town. And listen, I was at an odd point in my life. Like everybody, I needed money. And a buddy of mine that I met through a friend at art school was working at studio in LA doing Futurama. And he said, why don't you come do a storyboard test at the studio and see if you could do this? And test is, you come in for one day and you draw one section of storyboard, and they evaluate whether or not they want to hire you. So I went and did the test. They wanted me there, and I went in. And animation was different than TV. It was long form. It was longer contracts. TV was immediate. You know, I was working on a commercial for one day, then going to the next, and you do 12 of those, say, a month. But suddenly animation was, you're going to be on the show for a year. And if it's picked up, you'll be on next year. And even though I wasn't really necessarily an animation guy, I'd met a lot of artists that went to school outside of Los Angeles called Cal Arts that was very much about animating and classic Disney. I was sort of just more wanting to tell stories and do jokes. So Futurama was kind of the best for me in that sense that I got the scripts. And then suddenly, even though I was still saying, oh, I don't want to work in animation long form, I'm going back to TV and movies, it just got harder and harder to get out, sort of, in a good way. And inevitably, you kind of steer into it. You know, there's only so long you can resist it. And once it went from storyboarding to directing offers, it became pretty silly to turn those down. And then, you know, and I'd like to say I did it on my own. I had a friend, I got offered a directing job at one point on American Dad early on, and I turned it down. I said, I'm really not sure I want to really be a director in animation. I kind of got my goals towards film and stuff. And a buddy of mine from art school said, are you crazy? What are you nuts? Like, people wait for this all the time. You're just turning it down. I'm like, yeah, all right, fine. You know, it gets you, and you realize it, and you're working on it, and it's, again, it's, you know, it's the opinion thing, but you get the idea like, oh, you know what, I'm seeing what I think is being done wrong. Maybe I should take, you know, sounds dumb, but take this. And the rest is, I steered into it, and I've been lucky that way to work on shows, like I said, that I like. But that was the speed version of the from Rosetown in '88 to Los Angeles.
And it's actually quite a journey, and it's impressive, and your stick witness is admirable. So Family Guy or Futurama, Family Guy?
Futurama, yeah, I did Futurama. There was a couple little shows in between. Played a show called Drawn Together that was really inappropriate, but did a few years on Comedy Central, a show for MTV, 3 South, where I met the producer of Family Guy. Was this lady running 3 South? This show was on Warner Brothers did it, but we for MTV back then. And when Family Guy had been on in 1999, it aired. And we were doing Futurama at the same time. And really, it was kind of our competition, sort of weirdly enough, just for airtime. And it got canceled. And then when it was a big hit on DVD, it got brought back in 2004. And that's when she called me, as you get working and everything's about networking. She called me and said, hey, we're doing Family Guy. And I'd been watching the DVDs. I was over the moon about that. I was like, you kidding me? Yeah, sign me up. And so that was it. But when I got and did the first, we did this movie when we came back called Stewie, the Stewie movie. We came back. American Dad got picked up too, because it was Family Guy was such a rocket at that point. They're like, well, he's got this other idea. We're picking it up too. And a buddy now, but a guy I'd worked with at Futurama was going to run, as a supervising director, was going to run American Dad. He called me up and said, Bob, I'd love to have you over here. And I didn't want to go. I was like, I love Family Guy. I could go over there, but Ron, his name is, he's so great. And I was like, all right. But in my mind, I was like, American Dad, it's gonna be 13 episodes and done. They're gonna focus on Family Guy. They're gonna run this on 1 year. And American Dad's still running right now. That was 2004. But the point is, I did 6 years, first 6 seasons, start of 6th season, when they asked me to then come over and direct the Family Guy. And I went there for 3 years after that. And just to keep it rolling, one of the Family Guy writers got a show called Border Town picked up, and I'd worked on what's called the presentation. I directed and drew up the entire presentation, a 6-minute version of his concept. And it took a while to get picked up, but it got picked up, and I left Family Guy in 2012 to do that. So I was the supervising director of that show, and it's what unfortunately was a one and done. I mean, it aired 1 year on Fox and was canceled. And so at that point, I was done. And a producer I'd met through the Fox world, she'd been on Cleveland show, was going to go produce at Disney for this team that had made Phineas and Ferb. They were making a new show called Milo and Murphy's Law. And she said, I think you and Dan would get along really well. They're looking to do scripted shows instead of what they call board shows. I went over there and joined them. And Disney's been good to me. It's been 6 years now. And the movie was good and everything, and just opportunities and stuff. So I haven't, this is where I'm at now. I'm not sure, like everything. By the way, this is the nature of, if you're lucky enough in this business to land on a show like The Simpsons, which has been, my God, 30 years. I don't know how that works. But most TV is sort of short term. you know, 3 years of work and then you're looking for the next job. So there's, you know, a challenge. You asked about challenges before. Challenge is staying in money. So reality is I'm in a position now, I'm lucky, and you feel that the business is at a high, we're creating a lot, and I've worked with enough people that I feel safe in my network that someone will want me to work with them later. Thank goodness. But there's a time early on when shows are getting canceled and you don't know where you're going next. It's very uncertain, can be very uncertain, big time. Even when, so I'm on American Dad, Family Guy's going, we're all at the same studio, but American Dad was on the bubble every year. And every year I wasn't sure if I was going to be, you know, still employed next year. I mean, to say I'd have to go look again. And that's what it means. You're going out and you're like, can I get hired here? And when Futurama got canceled, whole works of us didn't know where to go because it was so abrupt at the time. This is the first time it was canceled. It's been brought back twice since, but
I think,
yeah.
you know, that's quite a story. I think a couple of things I kind of can take from that is a couple of things, honing your skills and keeping working at that is huge. And then, you know, taking that big leap to get that, you know, whatever education is required, you know, going to, you know, for a prairie boy to go to New York, to go to college was probably back in, it's still fairly rare, but it was really rare then.
Yeah, I felt it. At least I was 95 when I went. So it was, yeah, it was still,
Yeah.
You know,
Doing what you had to do though. And
yeah.
the thing you've said a couple times, networking. I mean, and that's so true in so many careers. It's like once you get yourself in somewhere, is getting, you know, surrounding yourself with people that that kind of maybe lead you to the next.
Yeah, I know it's really basic advice, but you know, be good to work with, be nice to others, and get your job done. You know, like it sounds very, so that's not really advice, is it? But it is, and it's important, you know. And I think I say it in my role a little bit. There's always a tough fine line. It's egos. You can get into a moment where you really determined that the way you see a moment going in a show or a movie should be this way, and somebody else is pretty determined it should be that way. And boy, it can get tense and tight. But remember, in the end of the day, you're just making cartoons. And it's never, you know, that it gets, you know, it's all silly, but the point is, yeah, it's you know, there's nothing better. I do take everything personal, and there's nothing better, easier to talk to than an artist that's getting their stuff done. But when an artist isn't, and back in the day, we're watching Netflix all day long outside of your office, and you know that stuff's not going to get done, and you're going to make up for that. It can be very tough to separate that and be, hey, we're pals in the hallway. And, you know, it's tough. It's also the challenges of being a leader of your whatever group.
Well, I'm just going to ask one more question before I open it up here, and it's just maybe a general area. Like, I guess, you know, what kind of, and you've kind of described different positions you've had along the way. Like, what kind of salary range? I know students always think that's a common question, or kind of benefits that come along. You know, can you speak to anything like that?
Well, salary range is kind of all over the place. It's not like it's an easy thing to like. There's union minimums that are for storyboarding, say in the studios here. You know, I don't know. I guess I'll talk storyboarding. That's the best number.
That'd be a start. It's the entry level.
So a storyboard artist working in TV would start at, in American dollars here, would start at $1,800 a week. So about $1,800 a week would be a starting salary, and it has been that for 20 years. Okay. As a starting salary for a board artist. That varies all over the place. You can get onto different productions, it could be quite a bit less than that. You know, it could be 1,200. And it's really, but I just find in general, 18 is a start point, and it strays somewhere over the 2,000 a week. Now, that gets to the other thing I should mention, maybe haven't. This is a competitive business. It's not a business where you can kind of draw and we teach you to draw. It's everybody in this business. You know, there's people that came out of art school, but they've put in the hours. It's competitive. So it is good money, but it is, I would say, listen, you getting paid to draw is always good money, but the reality is that's, you know, there's an expectation with that, and it's competitive business. It's gotten technically less competitive as of late with so much work going on, but it's still the level of your work coming in is still is expected to be very high. So if that, just adding that little asterisk with the number.
Okay. I just will open it up now. There's a few people watching. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Bob?
Guess I was that thorough.
You were thorough. You were. Yeah.
Could
Well,
be. It's hard.
If there's nobody else, anybody?
I was just thinking, listening to your presentation about how the audio is done in advance by the actors
Yes.
doing the voice. And then when you come back to it and make an edit and, and add this new piece, then you get to a certain point and you go back to the actors and say, we need you to do this. Is that how it works?
Yes, exactly. They pickup lines and ADR. Sometimes they have to read to what I did. So for instance, I did a scene where this Candace was speaking at a smoothie machine, and there's a speed to the joke I did where she's not supposed to be getting herself a smoothie, but just keeps getting one, even though the other girl's yelling at her. And I'm speaking Candace's role, and it was in the cut for a very long time. We bring her back in and she has to record her character to the speed I did. So they play the movie on screen, and there's a beeping sound to the moment she has to record. She can watch the audio, watch the visual, I mean, and so it counts down, and then as soon as it goes beep, she's trying to sort of match what's there. But yes, pickup lines for anything new, just a general new scene, and then a lot of ADR in terms of like little fixes and stuff that we've done in that we have only a certain time that they can do it in, so we can't have them like expand it or act it out the way they feel like it. They got to kind of match what we have. And that's something else on executive producers real quickly, and that is direct actors in the booth. They're in the booth recording, headphones and the microphone. I'm in another room past the glass, and I'm listening with the script to see if I like what they did. And I'm pressing a button so I can speak to them and say, can you do that faster? Or, hey, they need to be a little more upbeat. Hey, that was really good. I like the first half. Could you give me the first half the same, but do this in the second half? So it's directing actors too. I forgot about that a little bit because we don't have only done that in recent years. So.
Got a couple. Yeah. We've got a couple questions in the chat box here.
What is the success rate to become an animator?
Yeah, you see that. Yeah.
Well, I would say, I go by the art school thing. The truth is, it's not a great success rate. The reality is, in terms of, I can go by a numbers game. This is not science, but when I went to Joe Kubert School, there were 110 first-year students, okay? Second year, not everyone can keep going to school. I get all kinds of reasons why. But as people were weeded out, it got to like 50 to 60 the second year. And then the last year, there were 30 of us, okay? So that's just people just realizing, boy, this is hard. It's not for me. I'm not prepared to put in these hours. All kinds of reasons, besides just maybe, I can't afford to go. I don't, whatever there might be. So now you've got that 30 students. How many of them are going to be working artists every day? My best guess is probably 25% at best, maybe less. Because the reality is it's competitive. It's not because it's lots of reasons. It's about the deadlines. It's about, are you willing to put in the time? It's about some people aren't able to take the criticism right at art school. Some people come in, they're really great at drawing figures. They're drawing superheroes. Boy, there's a guy who could draw Superman and Hulk and draw really well. And God, we all were enamored how great it looked. But the reality was he couldn't draw a background. He wouldn't put them in any scene. So he'd draw whole pages of comics with just superheroes looking really cool, but you couldn't tell a real story that way. And you'd say to him, hey, you got to work on this background. He was like, no, I don't. And so he got stunted and never worked. Didn't mean he wasn't talented. It meant that he wasn't able to have all the assets that needed to get out there and make it. And I've just found, because you got to have, someone said the other day, and it's true. And it's even when I talk about that, I needed to go get paid to have, you got to have drive because it's hard and it's years of. Someone asked, how much did you practice? A lot. Art school was drawing, learning in class for 6 hours and drawing for 5 to 6 hours at night. That's school, so that's different. But the point is, it's probably every day. On your own, it's every day. Even if you said to you, you got to put an hour in every day during the week, and on the weekends, you got to put 3 hours a day in. I would say, you know, a numbers game, but the reality is it's getting at it and taking criticism. So it's that. But the success rate, though not scientific, again, I just think about the room I was in and the guys I know that are working. That's in comic books or even just illustrated. And I only know really of our group, 4 of us are working in a real sense. One guy's a dentist now, very successful dentist. Nothing wrong with that. Another guy works for a newspaper doing, or at least he did, and it's changed, typesetting, setting up the newspaper pages in his hometown. And that's good too. He's creatively doing something. He's using his abilities to do something. There's nothing wrong with that. But yes, success rate, and I can only go by school, is relatively low. Yeah, sorry, it's not a scientific thing, but that's the best I can do. And again, that goes to how much you should practice, and it's a lot.
One question here about, you know, a tip on how much a person should practice? I suppose that varies, but.
Well, yeah, it's not, and like I said, it has to be every day, but it's a lot. It's, you know, that's the thing about being a kid that could draw. And I was lazy. Let's face it, I was a lazy kid. I really was. It's the idea like, oh, I feel like drawing now. We got TVs on and stuff. Maybe it's Saturday and there's not a lot on my 2 channels. I'm very old. And I'm like, I get some paper out. I'm going to draw things because I feel like it. Well, that's the bad part of it is the long-term success is it's drawing when you don't feel like it. It's drawing all the time. So it's like anything, you just get at it. And I am enamored at kids that I've met, I say, but when I was in my 30s and I met someone that had been drawing like a lunatic since they were 11 years old and they graduated out of high school and right in art school and were really talented, you go, oh my God, I'm enamored that you could have that kind of drive or like that, you know, ability to focus like that back then. You know, as a trade-off to all that, it's like quality of life. You know, I was like a dumb kid running around in Rosetown and, you know, being silly, and maybe I wouldn't trade that per se, but that's what it is. It's that you got to put in those kind of hours and time. It's just, it's not easy to quantify, if that helps. I don't know.
I think, you know, something you've kind of highlighted here was this dedication to it and this extra time. You know, you sometimes think of this as elite athletes, like, you know, they train all the time, like the hockey players up here, the ones that are really good, they do all this extra training and all this off-season work, and they just spend all this time on it. You know, you don't sometimes think in the arts world, whether it's music or animation or anything, that's the case, but really it is. I mean, it is to get to the higher the level you want to go.
And I've watched board artists, you know, go from they had the fundamentals of drawing and backgrounds and drawing the characters, but being extremely green about any of it gets done, to taking notes, taking criticism, doing their first show, their second show, third show, and watch. I've seen people go from that to like now they're directors in TV, and that's what it is. It's you see them improve, and you're like, you go to a place where you kind of had to hold their hand a lot to like, my God, I can give them 10 pages of the script, and I know what I'm going to get back and be excited to see because it's going to be done. And done well enough that I don't have to do a lot to it, which is important when we're all trying to get stuff done in a deadline.
Another question here, what program, and I guess animation program, maybe I understand that might be a computer program. Is there any home-based stuff?
Well, it's, you know, it's not, I think, I still really believe, I do believe in it. It's a Canadian company, it's Toon Boom, it's Storyboard Pro. You can achieve a lot in Storyboard Pro. You can, you know, I show that example of exploding. That had no sound in it. I can add in complete sound to everything I'm doing there. I can create full, almost animated. I can color that stuff in there if I wanted to, and give you a piece that's pretty close to like it works. You know, so I would just say the only one I can recommend. There's others. There's other things out there, but the industry standard in LA is Storyboard Pro, is what we're using to create television shows in that sense.
Okay.
That's not CG and like Maya and things to actually do a lot of that kind of stuff. That's different animal. I'm only sticking to 2D right now. I know 3D shows, you know, CG shows, they're all being done with different programs to do modeling and create the assets, the objects in 3D, you know, space. That's different as well.
Any particular post-secondary programs you'd recommend? Now, I mean, we know what you did, but is there
I'm a little out of touch. It used to be Sheridan down in Ontario, but that was really supposed to be Ontario students first. I believe there's good schools in Vancouver. I got to admit, I'm a little out of touch.
Okay,
Okay,
that's something.
but yeah, I think there's. Here's the thing about school. I want to say too. As long as it's not, some, fly by night place that's just cashing in on you. But if it's any kind of structure, has people that have just a bit of knowledge and has some sort of setup, it's really about what you can get out of it. It's putting in those hours, asking those questions, getting feedback. That's what I also saw that aspect in art school too, where you've got to be willing to go, okay, great, you gave me a grade. And there's some students who are like, oh, I'm really hung up on my grade. Who cares? The bottom line is nobody that I've worked with, any producers that hired me, have ever asked me where I went to school. They don't care.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is it's about what you're creating. So a good school, some of the things you're going to get out of it is having people to ask the right questions and learn technology, but you're also going to be surrounded by like-minded people looking for the same answers. And you're going to have people to go, look at this and tell me what's wrong. So when I was in art school, one thing that was important to me is the teacher would write what they thought, but I'd go back and go, I really appreciate the feedback. Can you give me the 3 biggest things that are wrong with this? Because I knew I needed to improve. And that was the only way. That's what I was so desperately searching for, was someone to say, what can I improve? You don't want, nothing good will come up when you're learning, I think. You want positive. Hey, great, I really love your drawing. Guess what? My mom still frames stuff that I can't look at. Like it's hideous. The point is, she loves it. Everything gets, you want a gold star, stay home. They'll tell you everything's amazing. You need to know, and you get to a place where you, hey, listen, something I did is fine, but there isn't thing. I look back at the movie and go, oh, I would have done this differently now.
Yeah.
You're always learning, so it is that element. School is about meeting people, getting feedback, building a network. Your early things. So I know there's good schools in Vancouver. I know there's good schools out east too as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on in the prairies very well these days.
Yeah, I think Vancouver's closest probably, or there's more of a hotbed of that kind of thing.
And I want to say that too. That's the thing is, as a prairie boy, I don't think it's changed anything. It's coming from the prairies. You're likely, and I said this to students in Saskatoon in 2002, you're going to have to move likely. It's not like we're producing. Present, I'm not speaking to anything, everything, but in Saskatchewan, say the work, the last I checked, the biggest amount of work was down east or in Vancouver. So the thing about going to school out in those places is when you're coming out, there's studios ready to grab you up.
Yeah. So
that's what you want. Disney just opened a Pixar, or somebody opened a new studio out there in Vancouver as well. There's other offshoots of companies that I know that have divisions. You want to go to school, and then you want to have opportunities to obviously get into it.
Somebody's asked a question that's maybe just more of an interest thing here. Famous actors or famous people you've worked with, Canadian ones in particular?
Canadians. Harlan Williams. I used to play hockey with him, so I don't know if that counts or not. I don't know if anyone knows him. He actually does a Disney show right now for young kids called Puppy Dog Pals. But he was a comedic actor that I thought was very funny in an old movie called Rocket Man and different stuff. He still does, some, you see him in some things now. No, lots. I kind of, you took it for granted because we had a record booth at Family Guy. So they came always through. You'd see people in the lobby, they weren't on your shows, or you'd be in the booth with people that you never, most recently, the movie. And this is, I'm sorry, kids, you're not gonna, maybe one you will, but there's a day that Weird Al came in. He was the main voice on Milo Murphy, so he'd done lots of work, but he came in that day. We were doing the movie, recorded some lines for him. And Emo Phillips was a comedian from the 80s that was in a movie Weird Al did called UHF. None of this will go, I'm sorry, kids, I apologize. But the two of them in this movie that I loved in high school, and here they were, older, certainly, in the same, sitting around the same room, and it's a bit surreal. You're chatting with, Weird Al was I love you, Weird Al, when I was growing up. There he is sitting on the couch, you're making small talk, and Emo Phillips was in the movie, is this weird carpenter, saws his fingers off in the movie, is doing this dumb gag for our movie, and we're like timing how long he can say the word run for this gag in the movie. So yeah, it's that's a day that was meant something to me only because of the weirdness of of a movie that I loved in school. I get a lot of questions about this. We're working with Seth MacFarlane's not a terrible thing. He's such a talented guy. You go to table reads where I forgot that element of it, but they read the script in character. You bring the actors in a room with the writers around a big table, and all the artists pour in, and we sit and we watch them read the script before we start drawing. And so you're watching a guy that talented do 3 voices on both shows and change between the characters. Another guy, Billy West, on Futurama, going between all the main characters, and you're just watching him have a conversation with himself. Hank Azaria was on Simpsons. I just set the voices there, of course, and he was our main voice on Bordertown. There was a point where we were trying to find the main guy's voice, super talented guy, and you watch him roll through 30 different versions of the same thing, basically, hey, there's a little bit of John Wayne, there's a little bit of, whatever, and he's doing these change the same lines over and over again, and you're just like, this is like ridiculous talent. But I don't know. I was also too of like, leave people alone. You're always a fan, but it's, I'm not like, some people like to get pictures and the whole
You don't
thing.
want to come across with like trying to get my picture taken with you.
Yeah, it's picture time. No, I never crossed. I'm not sure what I will at some point. I'll break. I know I will. It'll be like, this has to happen. I have no choice. It's too big a fan.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. Yeah, I probably there's lots. I'm afraid. Yeah, it's a lot of faces, and you're like, oh, that's surreal. Sort of.
Well, Bob, I think you've covered so many things here in so many aspects. I can't thank you enough for joining us today in a cold. I'm envious of your green tree outside. It's -20 or something with a wind chill today, and only people like you in California could probably relate to that. But
yeah, no, that's lousy. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, it's not so great. It's just a little bit of snow. We are supposed to be melting here by tomorrow or something, though, so it's going to get better. So yeah, it'll be all right. But,
I'll go outside and enjoy the 25 degrees on your behalf then, just in your honor. I don't miss the deep cold. I do that. I come home and I'm like, yeah, this part I don't miss. I like the snow.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks so much for joining us. I think we'll end the recording now, and we'll let you go. So take care. Thanks.